It's my pleasure to introduce Becky Spencer today. If you'll indulge me for a moment, though, I'd like to tell you why I'm standing here, and that's because I'm the newly minted chair of the Camp Storer Board. You notice I say Camp Storer because I go back to the 50s with Camp Storer, which we call today Storer Camps. There's still only one place, but you'll hear from Becky's presentation why we now have more than one camp, as it were. I'm a damn lucky guy. My dad grew up in the Old West End, and as a kid, he hung out at the Central Y. You know the old Central Y, a beautiful edifice at Jefferson and 12th, approximately, is now a treatment facility of some sort. But in those days, in the 20s, the kids that lived in the Old West End hung out at the Central Y. And it's from the Central Y that you learned about Camp Storer. And they had a bus that would take you up to camp. So when I was a kid, my dad signed me up for Camp Storer. And I spent the next 13 summers of my life going to Camp Storer as a camper and then a staff member and then a counselor. I think I only stopped because when I got into college, I had to get a job that earned real money, and a camp counselor doesn't make much. But it was the formative years for me, meeting the young men in those days, because the women only had about a week at the beginning of summer that was called the Women's Girls Camp, and the rest was all boys all summer. And it was quite a time. It's where a young man could learn to shoot a rifle or bow and arrow or ride a horse and swim every day. And it was a place that was idyllic for a young man. I am forever grateful for the experience that I had and the people that formed me. And it's where I first met the Anderson family, and who are today still intimately involved in camp activities. But I can remember as a kid Harold Anderson and John. It's where I first was with Mike Anderson as a kid. Heck, you could probably call Camp Storer Camp Anderson and not be far off. George B. Storer founded Camp Storer with a $1,000 donation in 1918, and that's why we're here today to celebrate our 100th anniversary. Anybody want to take a guess what $1,000 is worth today? Do the calculation in your head. I Googled it. It's $18,000. For $18,000, George B. Storer started Camp Storer, and it's become such a jewel in the Toledo in the city of Toledo's many jewels. Finally, I just want to say, if those of you that haven't been to Camp Storer, don't know where it is, it's in Michigan. It's in Napoleon, but not Napoleon, Ohio, Napoleon, Michigan. You go up in the old days, we'd go up through Sylvania, through Blissfield and 223, turn left on 50, go through Brooklyn, go a few more miles, you arrive in Napoleon, turn left another mile or so, and you come to Stony Lake, and that's where Camp Storer is. It takes about an hour and 15 minutes to get there now. Let me introduce Becky. As you heard, she's the Toledo Y's Vice President for Camping. After graduating from BGSU in education, she began her career as an educator in 1981 in a program that's known as outdoor education with the Y. You'll hear more about outdoor ed. It has now become our biggest program at camp. In 2008, she left us for a while, went down to Disney World to operate their child development program. She returned home in 2011 as executive director of Partners in Education. Now, I'm not familiar with that, but many of you probably are, because it was launched by the Rotary some 25 years ago. And I think it's still active today, if I'm right, President. Ms. Spencer manages an annual budget of almost $4.5 million. She oversees camping activities for about 17,500 participants, mostly children, but adults too. There's women's camp and family camp and other activities for adults. She and her family live in Napoleon. Her husband's Larry, terrific guy in his own right. I give you Becky Spencer.
Thank you, Greg. You did share most of everything I was going to share, but that's okay. I have pictures. I was a little distracted during the time that we were introducing guests, and I would like to introduce a few guests that came along today because of this presentation. We have over here Mike Lawrence, who's also a board member. He's with Romer Insurance. Brad Toft is our president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Toledo. Next to Brad is Charles Green. He is an alumni of Storer Camps. Casey Hoke, our senior, well, he's a member, so you guys all know him. And Gordon McRitchie, who is a development director of our annual campaign. And there's so many friends here, too, like Judd and Dan and Dick and Kathy. Thank you for being here today. And I am just very curious as to how many of you attended Storer Camps as a staff member, child. Just raise your hand. Staff member, child, outdoor education, Indian guides. Good. So you know what I'm talking about. Now, I am used to talking to people about camp on an individual level, giving a tour. So this is a different format for me, and I want to share a little bit about our past, present, and future. I also want to share with you that research indicates that camping is one of the most influential and impactful programs that can affect a child's development. At our camp, kids feel safe, they develop relationships, and they gain a sense of achievement like they can nowhere else because they're on their own with really cool people that are their camp counselors or their cabin leaders, and they get to do things on their own. I don't know, Walt, is my drone picture gonna work? I've got it on there. Oh, here we go. We're doing a little flyover of camp, and that's the north dock that you see right there. And it stops and starts a little bit. Back at that brown roof back there is our Malachi. That's our dining hall. Seats about 425 people. And now we're flying over Carey's Cove, where we have our boating activities. And most of our activities year-round are operating on the north side of camp, which used to be the girls' camp. And we are also operating the shoulder months in the summer season on the south side with teen camping and a day camp. And we are actually doing summer school as well for Jackson Public Schools. So as you can see, we have a lot of trees, a lot of trees. And probably those of you that were there in the 40s and 50s, it would still feel the same, but you'll say, where did all these trees come from? So there we go. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about our property. Greg did a nice job describing on how to get to camp. Today we're about 1,200 acres, and we have about 90% of the Stony Lake is the name of our lake, 90% of the property on the lakefront. We have about 15 camp neighbors that we are good friends with, that we work with to make sure they help us with our campers. The wind blows their boat down the lake, and sometimes they're out there to call or lend a hand. We have over 100 buildings. We have over 100 boats, 50 horses. Our key programs are summer overnight camp, outdoor education, special programs and group retreats, and something new called Camp Catch a Rainbow, a camp for children with a cancer diagnosis. Now I want to go back to 1918, where I just am in awe of how the trustees of the Toledo YMCA had the vision to get this little spot on Stony Lake. They rented from a guy named Grover Hyatt. They rented 9 acres of property. and put kids on a train up to Jackson, Michigan. And then Mr. Hyatt took his horse and trailer and went and got the kids from the train station and brought them back to the 5 acres. And they had their first camp experience. We were meeting community needs at that time. Boys were lost. They were running the streets, getting into trouble, drugs, all that. And sounds familiar, doesn't it? On your table, there's a what if piece, and it talks a little bit about what the YMCA of Greater Toledo does today, success in schools, sense of belonging, and community, developing stronger community in our health. And Storer definitely does that on every aspect of what we do, and we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the trustees of the YMCA of Greater Toledo to help us get started. Here's a little bit about our lands. We do agriculture. Do you do agriculture? I don't know if that's the proper way to say it. We lease some of our 1,200 acres out to farmers. We've got pastures for our horses. We grow our own hay for our horses. And gardening is a really big part of what we do in the summer months with children. We actually teach them how to harvest the vegetables and to make dishes and follow recipes and use big knives to chop them up too. So parents are very happy when their kids come home and can help out in the kitchen a little bit more. And I want to thank Chuck Stocking for planting that bug in me to have the desire to teach that, because when I was working with him before, when I was in Toledo, I knew that was a passion of Chuck. So wherever you are, Chuck, thank you very much. We also have environmental and wildlife stewardship opportunities. We have butterfly gardens that are out there attracting the monarchs, and they are also attracting the honeybees that are so fragile right now in Michigan. So we've got some pictures up there. And then we have a fen restoration area. If any of you are in the environmental work, you understand these things. We've restored a savanna area back to its original habitat, turtles, and we do environmental burns because we would be just an overgrown jungle if we didn't do that. And speaking of water, I know that's a passion and a project of Rotary. We have 13 wells, and we test them on a quarterly basis. And you've got to get your testing right. If you have ants at the top of the well, it can mess everything up. So, I've learned a whole lot more about more than just working with children. Learned about agriculture, well testing, and the lakes. We also have outdoor programs for kids and adults, and stargazing and hiking. We've got 6.2 miles of trails and activities on our 240-acre Stony Lake. And I like to always share this, is that research indicates that outdoor experiences are a part of natural restoration that our brains need. If you've had chronic stress, illness in your life, too much technology, getting outdoors will help. And that's our focus with our guests and children that come to camp. Next, we're looking at some of our original dock on the south side of the lake. And many of you, who remembers the bell? 15 minutes before the meal. Maybe we need that out here in the hallway so get people in here to eat. That bell would get rung, and it was also used for emergency purposes, but now we have walkie-talkies and our cell phones and things. And then up there is the original girls' dining hall, and then below that is just a postcard, actually, back from the 60s. And you can actually see my elbow in that, but you can't really. Here's our tower that the Bobby Anderson family, along with Art Iron, I understand, in the early 70s, they built this. And jumping off the tower is still a great adventure for children, and that's one of the things that they need. The tower, my nephew came to camp, and he jumped off the tower like 78 times in a row before his mother made him stop. So I will also share with you that Stony Lake is still the favorite of our campers, and swimming in the lake is the favorite activity of children in the summertime. Next, we have some sailboats here. And the sailing back, you guys, many of you knew Fred Hibbert. He was a good friend of Storer Camps. He's a former Rotarian. He passed away about 5 years ago. And before he got too bad, he wanted to get some of his sailing stuff up to camp. So we actually have one of his chests, big wooden chests with sailing parts in it that we use to take care of our boats. And I will always be grateful for Fred. Fred was a trustee when I started with the YMCA back in the day, and he would say, you know, youth programs do not cover expenses. So, you know, we have to be careful about youth programming. But, and it's still true today, because we need to always be raising money to subsidize our programs for the kids. Also, with our sailing program, the interlakes were big back in the day. Now the kids like the sunfish because they can get out there and learn it quickly, and it's more of an independent thing. We have a group of volunteers that come from all over the country. They're called the Boat Boys, and they were campers in the 60s and staff members in the 70s, and they come back to camp every spring and every fall to take care of our boats. And it's a rigorous and fun program. It just evolves with time, like kids and kids' needs are. Our next slide is about our sailing, or the canoeing. And you can see safety regulations are so different. Back in the day, we would overload boats. We wouldn't wear life jackets. And now we definitely wear life jackets. Kids have to pass a swim test and all that to be able to go out without a counselor. That's a lovely picture. Anybody see themselves in that picture? I think Charles was in that other one. I think that was you, Charles. So then kayaking is also a big, the paddle sport programs have grown, and they provide kids independence on the water pretty quickly too. So we have fun yaks and canoeing and kayaks and paddle boards. And I just love this next picture. You get out on the lake. It's time to learn to paddleboard. We had two specialists from the Canoeing Association help us get our paddleboard sport program going, and they would often tell me that we have the best paddle sport program for kids this side west of the Rockies, this side east of the Rockies. And they could say that because they trained and worked at several camps all over the country. So it's just been a wonderful thing. And one of our summer camp counselors had passed away sadly in a terrible accident, and her family took her college savings to help develop that area for us, and we're grateful for that. Now we have some age-old programs that really, they just don't change that much. The waterfront, you can just see what the dock was like back in the early, like in the 50s, and then next to it is a current day. And then the other is of archery. And these are timeless activities for kids, except for when I got to camp, I wanted to do something a little different with archery. So we went out and got 3D targets. So we've got these rabbits and bears and things that is, instead of it's always shooting at targets. And hunting is a big sport in the Michigan area. We want to teach safety, and we want to have kids have fun too, but it all works out at the end of the day. But if you compare those two pictures side by side, not much has changed, not even the safety regulations. We probably still use the same commands. Next, I have a picture of the tents. So here's the George B. Storer story. In our second year in 1919, he gave us that $1,000. We were able to purchase 10 tents and dig a well, and to get things started. But then I found out that those tents didn't last too long, because 4 years later, the Rotary Club gave us money to build the Apache cabin in 1923. So thank you very much for that. You helped us get into our facilities that were more permanent. And then you see a stockade cabin there, which was all the rage back in the 70s, and then kids in rustic cabins, and then on the bottom of the screen with all the green grass in front of it, that's a lodge. And we have lodges that sleep 254 that are air-conditioned, bathrooms, showers, more privacy, things that kids need today to be successful at camp. And, back in the day, we didn't have air conditioning in our homes, but now we do. And it's what we need for some of our kids. And they need to be, we need to get going on getting some of those replaced, because some of our older cabins replaced, because they're just so old. Next, we have our faith, our core values that we teach. And thank you so much for bringing that up in the prayer. That was very nice. We are still teaching I'm third, God first, others second, and I'm third. And after each meal, children are nominated to win this, to get this recognition. And the kids that come up get cheers done after them, like, Charles is looking good, Charles is looking fine, come on, Charles, and flip that sign, flip the sign. And the kids with pride flip the sign, and it says make a difference, and we all holler out, make a difference. And that's the first thing those children will tell when they get picked up by their parents or they go home. And that happens throughout the year with outdoor education and with our summer camp program. We are inclusive in our approaches, and we are teaching the values of caring, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Here we have some past photos and current day photos, and I just want to share with you that bottom left-hand photo there is me sitting on Greg McKee's lap when I was a teenager. So, any of you know Greg McKee? A couple of you. Okay, great. 10 years later, it's really interesting because that is not legal anymore in our policies. And Greg and I actually wrote the policy for our national office to eliminate lap sitting, back rubs, and full frontal hugs. And we invented what you see on the other one, the side hug. And this was all part of the mid-'80s, an attempt to help make children safer. And the work that we did back then ended up transforming how the YMCA approached our work with children, faith-based organizations, because we want to make sure children are safe and they're with people that should be with them. Also, the picture there with the tie-dyed children, that's our Camp Catch a Rainbow program. We started, we own this program now. It was operated in the past by the American Cancer Society. All their funds are going directly to research now, and so we said we don't want this program to stop. And some courageous camp director, this was like a month before I got there, said, we're not going to stop this program. If you keep the volunteers, if the volunteers will commit to come on over and become YMCA volunteers, we'll raise the money and we'll still operate the program. So every year in August, we have about 100 children with a cancer or cancer diagnosis or in remission come to Storer Camps, along with 54 of the most incredible volunteers you would ever get to know. They are pediatric oncologists. They are nurses in the emergency room. They are child life specialists. Some of them are even alumni that went to this program when they were children and are now survivors, and they want to give back. For a child growing up with cancer, it's a devastating thing for them and their family. And this camp gives them a chance to give their family a little bit of a respite because they trust us and they trust the activities and that their children will be safe and healthy. They trust that we're going to show their kids a good time, and they're with other kids that are just like them, and that's what's really critical. I like to think that we're replacing medical memories for these children with fun summer camp memories just like other kids get to have. Camp Catch a Rainbow. An old picture of the sledding hill. And actually, I think at the top of that hill is the Ottawa cabin that Rotary helped to fund in 1948. Thank you so much. And it's now been converted into the cooking hut for the Outback program, by the way, so we're still using it. The fun and adventure hasn't changed. Our hill, the other hill that we use now, because we're on the north side of the lake, was the extra fill dirt or something from Malachi when it was built, and we just turned it into a sledding hill instead of pay $10,000 to move it away. So that's a lot of fun for the kids. In the black and white photo, that is a Glacial Ridge, and 15,000 years ago, that little hill was built. And then the Malachi, the other picture, is one we built ourselves. It's amazing. Camp history. On to our 100th anniversary. We had about 850 people show up from all over the world, and it was incredible. You'll see Clark Ewing in the black and white photo there and a current day campfire photo. We had a Hall of Fame induction. Our campfire we streamed live, and so we had hundreds of people join us that couldn't be there that day, and it was incredible. Mike Lawrence got up on stage and did songs with actually current day Outback campers, and they just took a minute to practice what they were doing, and they were right spot on. 4 generations of Outback campers leading their main song. Amazing. We had a committee of 20 that spent almost 2 years, And as a result of the celebration, we now have an official alumni organization that's already on its third alumni visit. We're going to be in Chicago at the end of this month to pull alumni together. We want to make sure that our folks stay connected to Storer Camps and to each other for a lifetime. Kathy Rohde made this thing a success. She took over all the communications, thank you, Kathy, and worked with the television stations and the Blade, and just did a great job making, getting the word out about the event. We had a drone fly over and take a picture of the event. So there's some of us. Brad Toff kicked off our Hall of Fame recognition, and then Dick Anderson received recognition, is now in our Hall of Fame. And you know, his quote is, "Work is a blessing," and we were able to recognize him for that. Dick was able to start our Project 600 back in the 60s, and many of the companies you work for today also come up, and they would come to camp and put in 600 man-hours of volunteerism over one weekend to build our cabins and build the infrastructure for camp. Today we have smaller groups like that, but follow the same best practices, and Dan is involved in one of those. Dan's a woodcutter, and he comes up and he splits wood for our biomass system. And those are fun weekends, aren't they? Tylenol and everything. We had fun with our group called Randy Zitz and the Grease Movers, and that was a singing group from the 70s and 80s. Is that making anybody smile? Randy Zitz and the Grease Movers? Da, 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 da. We had a lot of good music. Anyway, and then on the other side of that picture, the two girls there, the two young women, are the Martin girls, Danny and Ariel. They were in the first child care center that I opened at the South Toledo YMCA back in the 80s. Their mother was single. They came to camp on scholarship. They came and were in child care on scholarship. And I'm so proud to tell you that they are both very successful young women. One is a teacher and one works in the computer industry. And that is Danny's little boy, Quentin. And they came up to the 100th anniversary, and they're doing so well. And it makes me happy because their mom was killed in a terrible accident back when they were still in high school. And it was YMCA Storer Camps, Maumee Valley Country Day School, that really took them under and helped them get to adulthood. And they're two of our very special people. You guys, some of you recognize Mary Manel there. On to summer camp. We have about 1,200 campers each year. Our exit survey indicates that 99% of the kids that come feel safe, feel they've learned something, and that they've achieved, and that they feel a sense of belonging. We've converted the old Lewis and Clark cabin to a library. We are making sure that our youngest campers get a chance to read while they're at camp, because we know that by third grade, if you're not reading to learn, you're in trouble. So we want to keep up the summer learning loss through all the activities kids are doing at camp and having extra access to literacy. Kids at camp, at summer camp, they really like it because they get their sense of independence. And my first summer there it was 2014, as in my current position, one of the girls stood up on her chair as a prayer. She said, "Dear God, thank you for this food, and thank you that we have a whole week away from our parents." Amen. And then all the kids got up and cheered. So, they like the independence that they get. And we have lots of adventure and fun for them. I think we had the climbing tree before anybody did. Our climbing tree's about 15 years old now, and we've got a couple of those, and especially those are very challenging to do, but we also have an adventure course and other activities. We also have our horses. We have a ranch camp, so we have Storer Camps. We have more than one camp, and kids get to trail ride. They get to care for horses, and our Rough Riders get to go away from camp, and they go learn how to, we take them and they use a park system and learn how to do equine programs away from that camp. There's our little piggy. There's some more current archery, and next we have just some other fun pictures. Zoe there with the horse doing the hand painting. She was one of our Camp Catch a Rainbow campers. Next program is the Outdoor School, and this is our 51st year of outdoor education. and Ottawa Hills comes. The kids come up, and also Ottawa Hills seniors come up for their last week of school before they graduate. Our curriculum is aligned with the next generation science standards, and we continually are using continuous improvement to make sure that curriculum stays relevant for what teachers and kids need. We also added an advisory board that's called our STEM Advisory Board with high qualified teachers that are advising us on what to do. Here is our net zero facility. We have added and are doing a lot with renewable energy. And what we're doing is teaching kids how to reduce their carbon footprint and how to understand what different careers in energy are and vocabulary in energy. Does that sound like Partners in Education or what? Then finally, we have specialty programs and group retreats. And many of you guys came as kids with the Indian Guide program. Well, we have groups like that and faith-based groups that are coming all the time. And we run our own programs too. Women's Wellness, Father-Son Weekend, Family Camp are a lot of fun. And you can see the picture of our dining hall in there. That's Malachi. We just recently hosted a big Christmas dinner. Okay, a few quick stories and then we'll have questions. I have Mr. Bald Eagle here. He had to move with his brother to the Midwest. His mother was a drug addict and in jail. His dad, their dad came and he got a discharge from the military so he could come and raise his kids because the mother couldn't. But he died within 3 months of them of coming back. And so they had to move to the Midwest from New Mexico to their elderly aunt and uncle's house. And they sought us out because they needed us. And here they're doing really well. They're in their 5th year coming to summer camp. And we know that we're a special place in their hearts. Another one, this is Charles here. I'm so proud of Charles. He attended Storer as a student from Glenwood Elementary. And then he graduated from Scott High School, but while Charles was in high school, he was a cabin leader for outdoor education. And then he started college and he started to work for us as a summer camp counselor, and he showed his leadership skills and became a village director. And then he taught in our outdoor education program. Isn't it weird to have someone talk about you like this? Now, Charles is working full-time with the Zeph Center as an integrated care specialist, and he shares with me that he could never have done this job without his work and guidance from Storer Camps. And I'm just really thrilled that he's here helping Toledo kids. And so proud of you, Charles. Finally, Camp Catch a Rainbow, where kids can be kids. And they can replace their medical memories with fun memories. We have a little girl, a camper named Maddie, that was getting ready to do the zip line. And she was afraid. She was like, she'd go to do it. And that's when you zip across a thin wire that goes across ours is a field, there's gorges or whatever. And she was about ready to come down, but all the volunteers and other campers were cheering her on. Maddie, you can do it. And then they had given up. And she was going to come down from the zipline platform. And all of a sudden she yelled out, "No regrets." And she zipped down that line. And that became the motto of Camp Catch a Rainbow. But unfortunately, we lost Maddie that next fall to her cancer. And I just love the story about her because she lived her life with no regrets. And we were able to offer that experience to her so she could live to the fullest when she was healthy and well enough to do that. And we have stories like that every day at Storer Camps, not just from our Camp Catch a Rainbow kids, but those that come, alumni from the 80s that are coming back to saying, I wouldn't have survived if it wasn't for Storer Camps. So what I would like to do is just invite you all to come up to camp anytime, come for a visit, send your kids, bring your group. And just remember what we're doing. It's not just about individuals, but it's for us and for a better community. And the restorative work that we do with nature and and the new experiences we can provide for others help us to impact lives. And thank you for all helping to make that happen.
You can see if there are a couple of questions.
Okay, do you want to introduce that or me?
Go ahead.
Okay, who caught a 5-foot bass on Stony Lake? Anybody have a question? Story to share? Our summer camp counselors come from all over the world, actually. We work with a camp placement program and bring in counselors from Poland and Costa Rica because part of our work is international. Others are alumni that have come up through the ranks as campers, and we have a strong counselor and training program where we are training our own to become summer camp counselors.
I guess we're set.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Becky, for today's great program. To show our appreciation, our Toledo Rotary Foundation will be making a donation in your honor to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. And we'd like to also give you this Historical Tales of Toledo book as a gift.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Please join us next week when our speaker will be Brian Kennedy, President, Director, and CEO of the Toledo Museum of Art. Immediately following today's program, the new member committee will be meeting in the Presque Isle Room. I want to again welcome Tom and Jody. Welcome to Rotary. Great to have you. And Andy and Pat, thank you for bringing 2 great Rotary members to our club. Now, as funny as he was in 2018, Chuck said he was going to be even funnier in 2019, so no pressure, Chuck.
It's not a large leap. Does anyone, trivia people, does anyone know who Alan Napier was? Alan, you're not. Well,
Looks
there's
like
a big clue right there.
Yeah, he's the butler on Batman.
He's the butler on Batman. He was born on this day in 1903. He did 120 episodes of Batman, 1966 through 1968. Anyone want to guess his last name, or anyone know his last name? The character's last name was Pennyworth. So this is from a website, believe it or not, called modernbutlers.com. Early in his career, when Albert Einstein was making his first tour of the speaker's circuit, he usually found himself longing to get back to his laboratory work. One night, as they were driving to yet another rubber chicken dinner, Einstein mentioned to his butler that he was tired of speech making. "I have an idea, boss," his butler said. "I've heard you give this speech so many times, I'll bet I could give it for you." Einstein said, "Why not? Let's do it." Einstein donned the butler's black jacket and striped pants and sat in the back of the room while the butler gave a beautiful rendition of Einstein's speech. Then a supremely pompous professor asked an extremely esoteric question about an antimatter formation, digressing here and there just to try and show everyone in the audience that Einstein had met his match. Without missing a beat, the butler fixed the professor with a steely stare and said, "Sir, the answer to that question is so simple that I will let my butler, who is sitting in the back, answer it for me."
Thanks, Chuck. So far, you've met the challenge, Chuck. Thank you. I wish you all a great week. Remember, let's be servants out there so we can be the inspiration. We are adjourned.